Good morning, everyone. The world is tumbling, and I am the most bearish I have ever been on the Canadian dollar. I believe the Canadian dollar is super bearish. Let me explain why from a fundamental perspective and from a technical perspective. So let's explain the chart perspective, the technical perspective, and the fundamental perspective so you guys get a full idea about what I'm seeing on the charts here. Let's start with the fundamental perspective. Canada, Britain, and Australia recognized Palestine as a state on the weekend, which is a very bold move and, in my opinion, a very negative move for their currency, right, from a business perspective. Now, why is it negative for their currency? Let me explain that in a way that makes sense. Let's say right now I had hundreds of millions of dollars that I wanted to invest in the Canadian economy. I'm an investor and I was looking at the Canadian economy and I was like, okay, you know what? I can find some business opportunities there. After they made that bold move, I will wait and see. Why? Because I don't know how the world is going to respond to these decisions. And therefore, of course, I want to take care of my business and I want to take care of my money. And therefore, I'm going to wait and see how the world responds first before I make any business decisions. Because if the world responds negatively and sanctions these countries, let's say, and US, let's say, imposes more tariffs on Canada or whatever, this is going to be a negative news for the Canadian economy. And therefore, I will just not input my money in that economy that is doing bad, right? Now, if the response is positive and the world doesn't do anything or responds positively or other countries follow, let's say, that decision or whatever, if the response is positive, then I will invest my money in the Canadian economy. However, right now, investors are in a wait and see stance. They are like, okay, let's keep our money for now, see how the world responds, and then decide what we do with it. And therefore, this is going to stop the money inflow into the Canadian economy, into the Australian economy, and into the UK economy. That is my perspective, and this is how I see it. Now, I'm only selling the Canadian dollar out of those three instruments. Out of the pound, out of the Australian dollar, I'm only selling the Canadian dollar. Why am I only picking on the Canadian dollar? Because I was already bearish on the Canadian dollar even before they made that decision. Why? Canada has the highest unemployment rate it has had for the past 4 years. It's 7.1%. It's even one of the highest compared to most major countries. They really have a big unemployment problem. They have a very big labor problem, guys. And therefore, their economy was already doing shit before they took that decision. So I'm already bearish on the Canadian dollar even before they made that decision. And now that they made this decision, in my opinion, investors will go on a wait and see stance. And therefore, that's even more bearish news for the Canadian dollar. So we have bearish square right now, right? We have double bearishness for the Canadian dollar. And that's why I am very bearish on it. And that's why today I am selling the Canadian dollar and I'm buying the US dollar in that specific trade. Now, why am I buying the US dollar as well, right? Why am I buying it? Now, I already explained in my previous YouTube video, guys, that investors were expecting the Federal Reserve to cut down interest rates very aggressively, right? Because the US has been perceived as a country that has a very weak labor market as well. Of course, it's not as bad as Canada. However, it was perceived that it's a country that has a very weak labor market, and therefore, investors expected the Federal Reserve to cut down interest rates aggressively. Now, Powell did a meeting and he was like, no, we're not going to cut it down aggressively. We're only going to cut down the interest rates by 25 basis points. That's it. And he said, we don't even have a bad labor market. It's just that there is less immigrants coming into the US. As a result, there's less people that are being hired. And the reason why there's less immigrants coming into the US, it's not because people don't want to come to the US anymore. It's only because Trump has a very tight immigration policy. So as a result, it's only logical if you have less immigrants coming in, then you have less workers coming in, then you have less jobs added. It's logical. We don't have a very bad labor market. So investors were like, oh fuck, so we were overselling the US dollar for weeks now because we thought that the US had a very bad labor market, when in reality it's only justified by immigration and it's not that big of a deal. Therefore, I believe that after this major sell to the US dollar right there, because of expectations that they have a very weak labor market, right now investors are like, oh fuck, they don't really have a really bad labor market. So therefore, they are calming the fuck down, right? They were overselling the US dollar, and right now they're calming the fuck down once they realized that no, the US doesn't really have a really bad labor market. All right, so that's why I also believe in the bullishness for the US dollar, because after this overselling, investors just woke up to the fact that no, okay, it's all good, we overreacted, and therefore the US dollar is going to bounce after that. So I believe the US dollar is going to bounce, and I believe that Canada is very, very bearish, and therefore I'm buying USD CAD, therefore buying the US dollar and selling the Canadian dollar in that case for a small 1 to 1.62 risk to reward ratio trade all the way up into these highs. From a technical perspective, I already explained that perspective in my previous YouTube video. However, let's go again and explain it. When investors decided to start selling the US dollar because of a perception that they have a very weak labor market, the market went down and it grabbed these bottoms, it grabbed these stop losses right below these bottoms right there, and it continued pushing all the way down and it grabbed all of these bottoms right there. And you guys can see that we had a wick right here. Look at this. The market pushed down, created these bottoms right there, boom, right here. And then the market went down, grabbed the stop losses right here below these bottoms, and then started impulsing through to the upside right there. We got into this area right here. So I bought USD CAD. I showed it to you guys in the last YouTube video. I bought it right here and I sold USD CAD right there. So entry right here, TP right there. After I took my take profits right there, what the market did is it melted down with an unjustified, very big bearish candlestick to the downside that doesn't fucking make sense, because there was no negative news for the US dollar to push it down and there was no positive news for the Canadian dollar to push it up. So unreasonable bearish manipulation candlestick right here to take out these bottoms through to the downside. This is how I spot manipulation, guys, in the markets. It's not because we're taking a high or we're taking a low, but it's because it's unreasonable, right? So there is no positive news for the Canadian dollar and there is no negative news for the US dollar. Why the fuck would you melt down like that through to the downside? Manipulation. All right, so big bearish candlestick right here, unreasonable bearish candlestick through to the downside to take out these lows, and then the market is retracing from there. So this right here is a liquidity grab, is manipulation through to the downside, and then the market is reacting from that area through to the upside, and this is what I'm seeing right now. Therefore, a reaction, and right now market is going up. Therefore, I'm buying USD CAD right here. My target is these highs right there. That's it. And then I'm out. Let's see how that goes. Guys, as you can see here, USD CAD for the last month all in all has been really good to me. However, today we've added a new profitable trade to the portfolio right there. Let's go to that trade and basically see it right here. So basically we've sold USD CAD from the tops right here through to the downside, then we've bought it again right here, then we've bought it again right there. So today we add this profitable trade for USD CAD down there. That's it for today, guys, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.